This week on Alan's Antics. I'm not a big fan of the BBC, and I don't particularly watch Question Time, but this guy really does tell it like it is, and I don't need to say any more. Just listen.
I did some maths on the back of an envelope as well. I should say I'm an economist and a financial advisor, and I took the 10 billion of net savings that we would make if we left Europe, and I multiplied those by 14, which is the number of years obviously up to 2030. I then used the economic credit multiplier because of course you have the benefit of spending that 10 billion, the taxes raised on it, some economic growth and so on. And do you know the figure I came up with? The figure I came up with was 1.5 trillion, which means that if we leave the European Union, we'll be able to fund and repay the national debt by the time 2030 comes.
I think you should be in the Treasury. You should be in the Treasury.
She thinks, Kate Hoey thinks you should be in the Treasury.
Well, it looks like Aaron Banks has been stirring it up in Westminster again, because he just told the truth, and they don't like the truth down there. But this is the report from the mirror.co.uk. It does include a video, and I'll be including the audio so you can hear the man himself tell the truth. Millionaire Brexit backer Aaron Banks declares everything's buggered in parliamentary committee.
But I would argue, and I think most people would see the Bank of England's governor as the most respected economist. He thinks it's the biggest domestic risk to financial stability. You don't share that view.
I believe it's the biggest domestic risk to stability. The Bank of England has printed £500 billion of quantitative easing. It's bought back bonds, its own bonds. It's collapsed interest rates to zero for 8 years and created asset bubbles all over the place, from property to stock market to the like. The biggest domestic risk this country faces is deflation of those asset bubbles.
What do you think the implications of leaving the EU would be on interest rates, Mr. Banks?
In what sense?
Well, what do you think will happen to interest rates, Mr. Banks?
Interest rates in America are zero. Interest rates in Switzerland are negative. Interest rates in Japan are zero. And interest rates in the UK will remain zero because everything's... And that's why it's all at zero. Well, so you can say that interest rates go up. But
I didn't say... Mr. Banks, I didn't say anything about what would happen to interest rates. I was asking Mr. Banks, the way these committees work is we ask questions and you answer them. Well, you haven't listened to the question. My question was, what do you think, Mr. Banks, will happen to interest rates in the event that we leave the European Union?
I was attempting to answer that. The interest rates worldwide are either zero or negative, and they will remain at zero or negative in this country, whether we Brexit, exit or Lexit or do anything else.
Once again, there he is telling the truth, and the Mirror is backing the government quite clearly on this and attacking the man who has funded Leave.eu. And don't forget, there's that movie as well. Brexit, the movie, funded mostly to the tune of £50,000 by donations to Leave.eu, yet Vote Leave get the official nomination. I wonder why that is. Is that maybe because they need to save the Tory party's backside? From freenations.net, David Cameron, fascist or fool? For a man as ignorant of history, ideologies, geopolitics, German imperialism and European fascism as David Cameron, his arrival at his fanatical support for the most dangerous movements in European history is more criminal stupidity than fascist malice. But a fascist is a fool with a thirst for power, and whether a fool or a fascist, David Cameron is the most dangerous Prime Minister since Edward Heath. By Rodney Atkinson of freenations.net. Visit there to find out more about Rodney's writings, and even buy some of his books to find out more about the EU state under which you are a citizen. Russia has re-emerged as a great power. President Obama, or Barry Saturo as I like to call him, has publicly called Vladimir Putin, quote, a schoolboy who slouches in his chair in the back of the room, and derided his country as a mere regional power. So it might have been found to be false. But wouldn't it be great if he had actually said this? Quote, negotiating with Obama is like playing chess with a pigeon. The pigeon knocks over all the pieces, craps on the board, and then strunts around like it won the game.
But on Thursday, the situation reached breaking point. Vladimir Putin arrived to meet the plant's owners and local authorities. His voice was determined.
Считаю, что вы сделали заложниками.
To those responsible for what has happened, I'd like to say, I think thousands of people fell victim to your arrogance, unprofessional behavior, and possibly even trivial greed. This is totally unacceptable.
Это абсолютно недопустимо. Вы подписали этот договор?
Did you sign this contract? Did Oleg Vladimirovich sign it? Why don't I see your signature? Come here and sign it. Come to me. This contract over here. And now give me my pen back.
The unthinkable has become a reality. Russia, seemingly finished after its defeat in the Cold War, now is emerging as a prospective great power challenging the West. Russia has done the unthinkable, become a great power, filling the void left by other former great powers that have now shrunk in size, power, and influence. And in our case, that's down to our membership of the European Union, because everything is controlled by them. Our military, our government, our economy, our exports, our imports, everything. That's why Britain is no longer a superpower, and that's why on June 23rd we have to vote no and get out of this corrupt, vile, evil, fascist dictatorship called the European Union. And let's trade and do business and visit with our friends and partners across 22 miles of water, just on our own terms, rather than on the terms of some faceless bureaucrat sitting in Brussels wondering what to control next. The flavour of our crisps, perhaps? The amount of power we can use to dry our clothes in a tumble dryer? They've already limited vacuum cleaners. I, like many others, sat there back in 1985 and listened to Saint Bob, wishing that we would all send us your f***ing money. And we did. And I watched Live Aid. I was there that day, and I think I even bought the single, thinking I'm doing my bit to help Africa and to help poor children in Africa. However, all these years on, it seems that things are a little different for Saint Bob. He's a poverty pimp. Sir Bob Geldof wants $100,000 for an anti-poverty speech. An event insider said the Geldof payments, which included the cost of a minder, appeared hypocritical. Quote, it was an inspiring speech, but when you think he got paid $100,000 to talk about poverty, it seems like a bit of a contradiction, the insider said. That's $100,000 that could have made a difference to poverty right there. Everyone who was in the audience would have walked away in awe, if only they knew the full story. And that's just it, you see. Not everybody gets to know the full story. So, keep popping back here, keep listening, and we will do our best, for free, to give you the truth. Well, that was just a little snapshot of the week on Alan's Antics on RadioFreeUK.org. To hear the full recordings and a whole lot more, go to RadioFreeUK.org. And there'll be more next week. Take care and have a safe one.